looking at head and neck. All right, we're looking at head and neck. Now, remember, okay, in the past session, what we talked about in head and neck in the last video, we talked about the head. Okay, we said it has a skeleton called the skull. Okay, the skull, okay, forms the skeleton of the head, and we said that skull is divided into two. That is cranium, cranial bone, and mandible bone. Cranial bone and mandible bone. Now that cranial bone, we further divide it into neurocranium and to visceral cranium. All right. After we were done with that, we also talked about that the visceral cranium is the bone of the face. The visceral cranium is the bone of the face, while the neurocranium is this bone. Okay, this bone. Okay, of this upper part, and then we say another name for neurocranium is the cranial vault. Cranial vault, where you have the bulk of stored this thing. How do you call it? Vasculatures. That's the language. Vasculatures, as well as what? The cranial nerve. Okay, the cranial nerves. Now we said the cranial nerve, the proximal part has a name, and it is what? Calvary. Calvary. And then what else? The base. Okay, the base like this has a name called it basic cranium. Basic cranium. It has 8 bones. The neurocranium has 8 bones. And then what do we use? We said foci. Foci. Okay, foci. F for frontal bone, ethmoidal bone, sphenoid bone, occipital bone. Do you follow? Eh? Yes, that's what we said are the bones that you find there. Can see the frontal bone. Can you see the frontal bone? Okay, this is the frontal bone. Foci. The O is occipital bone. Can see the occiput. Occipital bone. Can you locate the occipital bone? Please check. Good. Occipital bone. Can see occipital bone down here. Okay. Foci. S for sphenoid bone. See the sphenoid bone. See the sphenoid bone. Somewhere about around this place. Sphenoid bone. Okay. And then we talk about the ethmoidal bone. Ethmoidal bone. And look at the ethmoidal bone. Can you look at the ethmoidal bone? Ethmoidal bone. Ethmoidal bone. Okay. Now, so these are the bones in the neuro what? The neuro what? Neurocranium. Beautiful. Neurocranium. You can see, talking about the ethmoidal bone. Okay. A sphenoid bone, frontal bone, occipital bone. Okay. Frontal, occipital, sphenoid, and ethmoidal bone. Ethmoidal bone. Okay. Ethmoidal bone. All right, so we've looked at that. The next thing we also looked at was those are the major ones. Okay, we call them the 4 singles. Okay, we have 4 singles, and then we have the other. Say there are how many? 8. 4 singles and 2 pairs. TP, temporal bones, and what? Remember, the temporal bone are 2. One here, one here. The parietal bone are 2. One here, one here. All right. They meet at certain points. All right, they meet at certain point. We'll look at that when we're looking at is it vision or not vision? We call it view, anatomical view. All right, anatomical view of these bones. Okay, so let's quickly move away from there. Talk about the membrane covering. Yes, we didn't mention that. The cranial meninges. The cranial meninges. That's a serious part to study. Cranial meninges. Okay. The shape. Yes, we didn't mention that. Mention the shape, and the cranial meninges. And that quickly reminds me of what we studied on histology. You agree with me that in histology, we talked about, watch this closely, in histology, we talked about the brain, the pendyma of the brain ventricles. We are coming there because this is histology. This head and neck will soon be going there. And look at the visceral bone. We said the mouth, upper and lower jaw, the nasal cavity, and we talk about the orbit, bones around the orbit. And we say there are 15. 3 are singles. Remember in neurocranium, 4 were singles. This one, 3 are singles. What are the 3 singles ones? Call them the mandible, the ethmoid, and the vomer. So you can call it VEM or MEF. MEF. Okay? VEM or MEF. All right? So they are single. MNM. NMM. MMM. MNM. MNM. You heard something like that? MNM. Okay, so the mouth, the nasal cavity, and the MEF of the orbit. The MEF of the orbit. So 15 irregular bones. Okay, 3 are so. Now let's look at this other one we said. Or this one we said we have the maxilla. Okay, maxillae. We have the inferior nasal. Okay, inferior nasal concha. Inferior nasal concha. Okay, next one we have the zygomatic bone. Okay, the zygomatic bone. We have the palatine bone. Palatine bone. We have the nasal bone. Nasal bone. And then we have the lacrimal bone. Lacrimal bone. So said the paired are 6. I have 6 paired. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Mix PNL. Mix PNL. Okay, what's PNL? It is profit and net loss. Profit and net loss. Okay, I didn't on my lights. You can see very well. Okay, profit and net loss. Do you follow? Now, moving away from there, we quickly said this light, what is hindering the light from coming up? Okay, so I think the lighting is okay now. So moving away from there, we talk about the visceral cranial bones of the face, MNM, that's the mouth, the nasal, and then the most of the bones of the orbit. The orbit is the eye. Your body is the best textbook. So touch the body as you are studying the body. So the bones that you have, the sphygmoid bone, before you have the parietal bone, sphygmoid bone before you have the parietal bone. Then up there, okay, you have the occipital bone. Then up here you have frontal bone. Okay. Okay, that's for neurocranium, not visceral cranium. Visceral cranium, you have the maxilla, you call it MEF, maxillae, okay, inferior concha, maxillae, ethmoid, and vomer, VMEV. So that's why mnemonics is good. This one is mix PNL. The other one is MEF. Now, the mnemonics are many until you keep working with them. And like I told us, I'm coming out with wonderful things to make this thing become interesting. Okay. So where are we now? MEV. They make the M is our maxillae bone, the ethmoid bone, and the vomer bone. Then the mix is the M there is the what is the problem now? The MEF is mandible bone, ethmoid bone, and vomer bone. Whereas the mix is maxillae bone, inferior nasal bone, maxillae, inferior nasal bone, okay, inferior nasal concha, inferior nasal concha. Let's put it concha. Let's put it that way. Forgive my pronunciation. You pronounce the way you'll be able to recall. Okay, can this light come up? Excuse me, please. Okay. Oh, so we said mixed PNL is M for maxillae, inferior nasal. So how do you know it's maxillary and not mandible? Because inferior is below nasal. Inferior nasal concha is below the nasal. Okay, inferior concha is a mix. The Z is zygomatic. Zygomatic. Okay, can we identify the zygomatic bone? Yes, the zygomatic bone is here. The zygomatic bone is here. Okay, the nasal bone. Okay, as this is inferior nasal bone. Okay, inferior nasal concha. Okay, so let's see, we can notice it. Okay, inferior, inferior orbital feature. Okay, that's not the one. Inferior. Okay, we're gonna find it. Don't worry. As we continue to study, we'll see inferior nasal. Then the palatine bone. The palatine bone, and we identify palatine bone. Let's see. Okay, it's not in this structure. We're going to get structure that we can see it. So this is the zygomatic bone. So the eyebrow, okay, zygomatic bone. So have you combed your zygomatic bone? Things like that. Okay, have you combed the hair? And so, like we said, you discuss your day-to-day life. You are combing your hair. I'm combing my hair. Also, do your eyelashes and hair on the zygomatic bone. That's this point. You can see zygomatic bone. No, zygomatic bone is here. Okay, close to the ear. Sorry. Zygomatic bone is close to the ear. Okay, this one. Zygomatic. Yeah, this is what we said in the last session. This is zygomatic bone. Okay, this is something that look like this high cheek here. All right, this is something you pick someone. All right, that is zygomatic bone. All right, palatine bone, nasal bone, lacrimal bone. Those are the two P's. So PNL is palatine bone, the N is for nasal bone, L is for lacrimal bone. What's lacrimal? Where the fluid from the nose, okay, fluid from the eye, sorry, okay, where the fluid, okay, comes out, lacrimal. Nasolacrimal is the fluid of the what? Is the fluid of the ear, of the nose. Okay, so with that we did justice to the bones, just knowing the names, and we make a little effort to knowing where some of those bones are. All right, now next thing we looked at was the view. Okay, how do you view those bones? How do you view those bones? We talk about, for the people we have, the norma superioris, and we use then we have the norma frontalis, okay, and then we say sleep. That's what we use, SLIP, sleep. Are you following? Yeah, thumbs up if you are following. Drop in the comment section. Let's get to be sure you are actually following. All right. So now we have the sleep. The L is the norma lateralis. I is norma norma frontalis. Okay, sleep. Okay. Norma superioris, norma lateralis, norma frontalis, and norma occipitalis. Okay, so you can say so. That's what we looked at. Okay, so we talk about the sleep as for normal and all that. Then another thing we're now looking at the formations, the formation this structure take, and we said the structure for the bone forming. Okay, we said what? That The bone forming the anterior part of the vault is the frontal bone, anterior frontal bone. So anterior, frontal bone. So we can call Paul posterior, anterior. So anterior is the frontal bone. Remember the frontal bone? Okay. And the greater part of the roof and side walls of the cranial cavity are formed by the right and left parietal bones. So the right and left parietal bone, remember the xiphoid bone is there before the parietal bone. So the right and left parietal bone, okay, form the roof of the cranial cavity. The cranial cavity. This roof here is formed by the left and right, or right and left, whichever one to put it, of that distance. Okay. So cranial cavity, okay, by left and right parietal bone, pla. So you can say pla, okay, pla, all right, parietal left and right bones, okay. And then the next thing we consider was the two parietal bone meet in the midline at the sagittal junction, okay, meeting point of the parietal bone is called what? Sagittal suture. Sagittal suture. Okay, pulse. Okay, sagittal futures. Please don't forget where we are coming from. Okay, if you are here with us, drop on the comment section. Remember, we started from cranium. We are singing that song. Okay, the song cranium. Okay, let's keep this way. All right. Okay, so hope you can see me now. So we are talking about the skull, the bone of the head. Now this bone of the head is the skull. The skeleton of the head is the skull. Remember, in your upper and lower limb, we said the human body has two types of skeleton. That is the appendicular skeleton and the axial skeleton. The appendicular skeleton is the upper and lower limb, your legs and your hands. Okay, pectoral region, pelvic region is also there. Now, but the axial skeleton is made up of three different skeletons: the thoracic, the thoracic cage, the neck, and the head. Head and neck, okay, head and neck, and thoracic cage. All right. Now, here we are in the neck, in the head. We are dividing the head again into, sorry about that, okay? Dividing the head again into bones. We say skull, mandible. Mandible, remember mandible is one of the bones of the face, mandible, all right? And then we have cranium. The cranium is divided into two: visceral cranium, the bones of the face, and then neurocranium, bones of the what? Of the vault. Okay, face and vault. The bones of the vault, we said you have occipital bone, the parietal bone, and sphenoid bone. Okay, ethmoidal bone. We are yet to see where that bone is in the head. Yes, you're carrying some things you are not aware, so should be touching them as you're saying it. That way, you're not completely saying, someone touch your head. Which part of your head? Please, paining me my occipital bone. That's what you should be saying. All right, until you understand that it's not actually the bone that's paining you, it's the membrane covering it, and we call it cranial meninges. Cranial meninges, the membrane covering the upper part, which is also the upper part of that bone. Okay, he said is BBC, that is the brain, okay, bony covering. The brain bony covering is called cranial meninges. Okay, so we move on. The upper part of proximal part is called cavaria. From Calvary, Calvary. Instead of RY, it's RIA. And then now we come about to talk about the eight bones. He said Sophe, S for sphenoid, O for occipital, F for frontal, frontal is here, occipital is here, sphenoid here, and then E for what? Ethmoidal bone. Ethmoidal bone. Then the other two is temporal and parietal. This is the temporal bone, this is the parietal bone. Okay, now we now talk about the view. We are coming back to viscera. We say parietal bone meet. This is a parietal. The left and right parietal bone forms the roof of the cranial cavity, and they meet in a sagittal suture. What are suture? They are called interlockings, joints that interlocks, joints that interlocks. Okay, you see how we are internalizing this. And this is the third or fourth time we are doing this. Okay, we're running through the session. The joints of the joints, okay, that are interlocked in the midway. All right. Then another thing we said is, let's talk about the left and right. Left and right parietal form the roof, and the parietal, the two margins of the parietal, okay, form the sagittal suture. Okay. What else? The anterior margin. Okay, anterior margin. Okay. At the coronal suture. The anterior margin joins the frontal. The anterior margin of the parietal bone, this is the anterior margin, they join with the frontal bone at coronary suture, something like Y. This is a coronary suture. This is a coronary suture. Okay, you can see the coronary suture. We're going to see the diagram shortly so that we really appreciate what is happening there. See? Said the anterior margin of the parietal bone, okay, form the coronary suture. Now, the sagittal suture meets with the coronary suture at the breccia, whereas down there, the occipital bone meets with this sagittal suture at the lambdoid or lambdoid suture. Suture is a lambda. It's called lambda point where it meets, and it's called lambda suture. Okay, there is coronary suture. Two coronary suture forms breccia. Okay, but two lambdoid structure form a lambda. Do you follow? Yeah. So two lambda structure form two lambda. Where is it? Two lambda suture forms what? A lambda. But two coronary suture forms what? A breccia. A breccia. Okay. All right. So let's get back to what we were doing. I still on this again. So what do we have? Parietal bone meets in the midline at the sagittal suture. The anterior margin joins the frontal bone. We talked about that. Then the coronary and the sagittal suture meet at a point called breccia. That's what we said. Okay, this coronary suture, where you have the frontal and the parietal meeting anteriorly, forms a coronary suture. And that coronary suture meets with the sagittal suture, okay, at a point called breccia, whereas the occipital bone meets with the parietal bone at lambdoid suture, and the lambdoid suture meets with the sagittal suture at lambda. You see now, look at it. The posterior part of the vault is formed by the occipital bone. We've already known that. Occipital bone is joined to the parietal at the lambdoid suture. We've said that. The sagittal and the lambdoid suture meet at the point called lambda. We've said that. Sagittal and the lambdoid suture meet. Now, in feta, frontalis, okay, there are gaps between the bones called frontalis at two main locations, thereby giving rise to anterior and posterior frontalis. Rise to anterior and posterior frontalis. There are gaps, okay, in fetal skull of the fetus. Okay. Now, in this way, we are going to end this session here. We're looking at the skull internalization session. Be able to internalize that. So meaning you can draw the skull now, okay, and you tell this story. So all this story here, how many are there? 1, 2, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Can tell all those stories, okay? And tell all those stories with just a diagram without needing to cram the diagram. First, the frontal bone, okay, is on the anterior. That's the first point. Next, okay, the parietal bone, right and left or left and right, okay, forms the roof of the cranial cavity. Next, we said the posterior, okay, the posterior view, we have anterior is the frontal, posterior is occipital, okay. Left and right cranium or cavity is formed by the left and right parietal bone, okay. Then after that, we talk about the meeting points now. We say the frontal meets with the parietal in coronary suture, whereas the parietal meets with the occipital in lambdoid suture. Now, in the lambdoid suture, the parietal, both parietal, margins of both parietal, all right, meet in the sagittal, meet the suture, sagittal suture, and the sagittal suture anteriorly meets with the coronary suture. We continue. We continue. So you see, the whole of that point now, we made the frontal and the posterior. The frontal, the anterior is frontal, posterior is occipital. Those 2 points. Now, we talk about the left and right parietal forms the roof. That's 3 points. Talk about the meeting point for the frontal and parietal, meeting point for frontal and occipital. That's 4 and 5. All right, 5 things now. So that is coronary suture for frontal and parietal, and then lambdoid structure, lambdoid suture for parietal and occipital. Now let's talk about meeting point for suture. So the meeting point for the coronary suture and the, in fact, meeting point for parietal is the surgical suture. Now, the surgical suture meets with the coronal suture anteriorly called what? Brakema. Brakema. All right. Now, whereas occipital, no, the lambdoid structure meets with the surgical suture at the point called lambda. Lambda. That's that. That's that. 1, 2, 3. Okay. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Okay. So 1, 2, anterior and posterior, those are 2 points. Left and right margin meet at the suture, that's 3 points. Coronary suture and lambda suture, that's 5 points. Brakema and lambda, that's 7 points. What else have we not considered? Let's look at it. Yes, and that is frontalis, fontanelles, fontanelles. Do not consider fontanelles. Consider brakema, brakema, coronal suture, surgical suture, cavity, frontalis. We've done lambda, lambda suture. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Why is it 9? Let's take a look at it. We talk about the surgical suture, the frontal bone, the roof, about the, talk about the coronal suture, about the brakema, talk about the occipital bone, lambda suture, and the lambda. And so, meaning we've completed everything. So For me, it's a plus. And we've done 30 minutes in this session talking about the bones of the brain, the bones of the head. Okay, so we've talked about the bones of, and it's a nice place to end. This is another piecemeal. Okay, do subscribe and like the channel, share if this makes sense. See how we move from book to bend to book. This, it must be exciting. You do the same thing. Pick this material, try to look at it, generate a flow chart, and then you come up with something. See, if you can watch this video to the end, let me know that you watch it to the end. Let me know how things you observe, what you learn, and then I'm going to hit you with a wonderful, memorable video anatomy of these wonders, and it's going to be coming up soon. So let me know once you finish watching and ask for this thing I'm promising you. Okay? Subscribe, share, and hold people to subscribe, and hold people to watch with you. Let them observe, oh, he didn't put this, he put this, and all that. Reference of this session is lecture notes and textbook by Professor Ali Gwegwe. Okay, concise anatomy with others. They write this with others. Okay, so our own is to master, to stammer, to plaster, to blister, to shelter, and gather till we have become champions in this. See you again by 11:15. We'll be looking at biochemistry pathways. Shout out. Thank you.